The book that I did for my reading project was Octavian Nothing by Matthew Tobin Anderson. Okay, so a brief summary of the plot is basically Octavian is born in Boston, and he is born in this college thing, and he grows up in this really scientific world, but that's just the way he knew it, and he saw everything in a very scientific base. But as he progresses and gets older, he realizes that life isn't actually like that, and he meets another slave called Bono, that he doesn't really quite fit in, and he figures out what slaves are and that he actually is a slave. So then he realizes this, and he realizes that everything is just tests. The whole book is based upon the scholars in the college are just testing African Americans to see if they are. So they want to test to see that the African American race is not as good as the white race. So it's taking this very scientific approach to slavery in the Americas. And then the next part of the book is called Pox Party, where all the slaves and people are injected with the smallpox virus, and 3 people get very sick, and one of being Octavian's mother, and she ends up dying. And the whole reason for the Pox Party was to see how the African Americans would do with it, again testing them to see if their genetics are anything like the white people. So they're basically thinking of them as a different race. So then his mother dies, and he just goes into this deep depression, and his only friend Bono is sold. He's just in a terrible place, and he doesn't relate to anybody or anything, so he runs away. And while he's on the run, he visits different, and the third part of the book, I don't remember what it was called, but the third part is all the different letters of people where Octavian went by and where he passed through. So the third part wasn't from Octavian's point of view, but it shows how he went, and it just showed how disgruntled and terrified he was, and he just really know where to go. He was alone in life. He was nothing. Octavian, nothing. And then in the last part, and then he finally gets caught and brought back to the college at the very end of the third part. So then by the time we get to the fourth section of the book, he is back in the college, but it's a lot different place to him than it was in the first part. So in the first part, he was treated like a prince. In the first part, he's just a slave to them by then. And in the very last meeting, he's like all tied up and gagged and shackled. In the last 10 pages, he gets in a meeting with Mr. Sharp, Mr. Gitney, and Dr. Terfestus. And they're talking to him, and Mr. Festus is like, "Oh, would you like some tea?" Blah, blah, blah. And they're talking and yelling at him. And then suddenly Mr. Sharp and Mr. Gitney just pass out. And so Dr. Terfestus had drugged them with tea. And so he and Dr. Festus had fled. They fled to Boston, and that's what happened at the very end of the book. It was a very big cliffhanger. So one thing that I really liked about it was how I've already seen slavery from the moral point of view, and we learn about it so much in school, but this is a very way of taking slavery and making it. I have never read anything like that before, how they took the scientific approach to it. That was very interesting, and that's something that I learned about it, how the people honestly totally thought that Africans were a totally different race of inferior to the whites. Okay. One thing I did not like, it was very dry. It was really hard to get through. It took about 100 pages for it to start picking up, and then I got pretty good during the Pox Party, and it was really sad when his mother had died, and then it just stopped, and then there was letters, and it was so boring. But then it got a little bit better at the end. The ending, it really did surprise me. I didn't think that Dr. Terfestus, if that's how you say his name, would help him. I mean, he was always kind of his friend, but I didn't know that. It was totally surprising me, but I had a feeling that he would run away. My overall evaluation of it is probably a 6 out of 10. It was interesting and good, but it was just really hard to get through.